monthly, sometimes more than once a month over the last few since February. And what our plan is tonight is to go over some of the concepts we've developed for the transportation implementation plan. We started with getting feedback last April. We met, some of you were here for that, and we solicited feedback from some of our surveys through the middle of May. And so a lot of what you're seeing are results of some of those feedback that we've been getting. And tonight it's really a purpose for us to check in and see if we're on the mark or where we're at. We have multiple concepts for a variety of different areas of the issues that we developed. And when you came in, you got a summary of some of the recommendations that Kinley Horn put together. So I'm going to pass it over to Jessica Lodds and Jeanette. I'll have her introduce herself. And they're going to go through the information that they've gathered and sort of lay out the recommendations so it gives you a little bit of context. And then afterwards, we're going to set up stations and you'll be able to ask questions, and there's some surveys, so I'll let Jessica explain all of that. So, thanks, Michelle. Just briefly, we're going to take no more than a half hour for this presentation because we want to give you some more time to discuss things and take a look at what's on the wall. But what we're going to talk about in the presentation is just reiterate the study purpose and the purpose of the meeting tonight, what we're looking for from you, go through some of that background data and input that Michelle referenced, and the process we've been through up to this point. Jonette is going to take over and talk about some of the existing conditions and the analysis that we've done. And she's going to touch on the recommendations, which are what's all around you on the walls. The preliminary recommendations are concepts. There are different options for your feedback. And then briefly touch on the next steps, what we're doing next. The purpose of this study is to provide recommendations to address the transportation issues in Como Park. Obviously, that encompasses a lot of different issues, and you shared that feedback with us back in April. But what we also wanted to point out is that we are considering the current conditions, but also known future plans. So a lot of you are well aware of the recent pool plans. That's a plan we considered in this, and you see some of those concepts on the maps. I also want to mention that we do have some information on this table up here. That's background information for you to take a look at, and a lot of that is also available on the website now, or will be starting tomorrow. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to update you on our progress, to present those preliminary options and recommendations, and then to get your feedback. As you're looking at these exhibits, we want to know what you think. I'll talk a little more about the comment sheets, the surveys a little bit later, but we have a couple of different ways for you to provide feedback tonight. And the way we're going to use that is, once we leave here tonight, we're going to put together a comprehensive package, a plan that includes each of these 5 elements, and then we're going to start talking about phasing and staging and how funding affects some of these options and the feasibility of some of these options. We reviewed 27 or maybe even more previous studies and documents. There have been several done for different aspects of the park. Another thing we're looking to do with this study is kind of bring those together for one whole plan for the entire park. Some of those recommendations from the previous plans have not been implemented. We kind of started our running list of ideas based on those past recommendations that have not been implemented. We actually listed them out as something to start from. Obviously, there's a reason some of them were not implemented, but some of them still had validity. So we started our list there. At the open house back in April, we had some large exhibits on the wall. We asked you to mark on there, make notes, tell us what your issues are, tell you where your problem areas are. And then we also conducted a survey at the open house and online. We received over 1,800 surveys in total, or actually even more than that, which I'll talk about later. We did some on-site surveying as well. But in those surveys, there was a place at the end where you could just write your comments. Out of those comments came a lot of good ideas about potential solutions. So we took those and we added those to our list, our sort of running list of ideas. As I mentioned, that survey, over 1,800 collected online, 81 at the open house.
And then on site, near the campus and at Como Town, there were actually over 1,000 collected. Como Town collected a lot. We took a sample of about 380. And I'll just talk a little bit about the results. Cumulatively, this is kind of speaking generally about all the different groups that we surveyed. There were about 63% of the respondents that were not residents of St. Paul, 37% that were residents. The area, or the place that people said they visited most were the attractions, which are the zoo, conservatory, Como Town. Neighbors, which were the results of more of the open house surveys, use it more for passive recreation, walking around the lake, walking their dog, that sort of thing. Most of the respondents visit between 1 and 11 times per year. Neighbors visit more often, obviously, up to 1 or more times per week. The zoo is the area most often visited from the total survey. For the neighbors, Como Lake was a very popular spot. The issues that came up the most, and we started out with kind of a list of 11 issues that we asked you all about, and we gave you votes and asked you to vote and weight your votes. Parking supply, parking demand, green space were the ones that came up most consistently across all groups. Historic elements, traffic safety, and transit were also important to you. And I would like you to know there are more detailed results available online, just posted today, and there's also a few copies on the table up here if you want to take a closer look at the results from the online surveys or from the more neighborhood type surveys and then the on-site surveys. They're all kind of divided up. We also, as Michelle said, have been working closely with the Project Advisory Committee on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. They helped us review the background data. They provided a lot of great input from the neighborhoods as well as the city and some of the vendors within the park. They also conducted some of their own neighborhood type surveys, which we also took into consideration. And then we also asked them to brainstorm. At this point, with the feedback we've received from you back in April, we had kind of narrowed things down to the 5 categories that you see here tonight. The roadway concepts, pedestrian, bicycle, parking, shuttle transit, and then wayfinding and signage were the 5 categories. We asked the PAC to brainstorm solutions. We added their input to our list of ideas. Also, a very important item that the PAC was undertaking during this time was coming up with goals. What are their goals for the project? And on the handout that hopefully you picked up on the way in, on one side are the goals and criteria. The top 3 that the PAC agreed were their primary goals are to preserve green space to the greatest extent possible, to meet parking demand of the existing and planned park facilities for the average summer peak, which Jonette is going to talk a little more about. Increase the mode share of transit, pedestrian, and bicycle to the park, and increase the capture rate, which is the percentage of the total visitors to the park, using the remote parking and shuttle facility. After all of this data input, we came up with a summary of issues, and this is just a very broad brush of the issues, but what we heard is there's not enough parking close to where people want to visit. The shuttle system is underutilized, so people didn't even really know a lot about it. There are concerns about losing green space. It's very important to people to protect the integrity of the resources in the park. Traffic congestion is a concern for people circulating, trying to find a parking space, pedestrian safety, how that ties in. And then they felt there is limited support of other modes. There can be improvements in the transit and the bicycle and pedestrian facilities. As a parallel activity, we were looking at the existing conditions in the park. And so Jonette is going to take us through some of that more data-driven analysis and what's going on in the park today.
team working on this project, specifically working on some of the traffic and parking analysis. So to give you some context for all the ideas and recommendations that you see on the wall, I just want to go a little bit through the analysis and kind of what led us to what you're seeing tonight. One of the things that we looked at as part of our background information is looking at how the number of visitors to the park each year has grown. And so what you're looking at is Met Council data, and these are essentially estimates of the number of visitors to the regional park per year. A couple things I just want to point out real quickly. In 2005, there was a little bit over 2 million visitors per year. There was a change in how the Met Council calculated the number of visitors per year that happened in 2008. So that is partially responsible for the jump that you see there, but only partially responsible. We know there was a significant increase during that time. But so you see in 2009, there was a little bit over 3 million visitors per year to the regional park. And then we looked more closely at the number of visitors per day to the zoo and conservatory. And the reason we specifically looked at the zoo and conservatory is because they have very good data available on a daily basis, whereas the rest of the park, there's no good way to count all those people on a really frequent basis. So we looked at those attendance estimates and started to see things fall into a couple of categories. You can see what's on the left side of the chart is the number of days per year, and then along the bottom is attendance ranges to the zoo and conservatory. So what we saw was that this range of about 8,000 to 12,000 visitors is most of the weekdays during the summer or a bad weather weekend, something like that. Then you have this range of what would look like about 30 days a year, where you have 12 to 18,000 visitors. And that 30 days is basically every summer weekend. So that's a pretty frequent event during the summer. And then there were a few days that were in that very, very high peak, that 18 to 25,000. And that was like Mother's Day or holidays or just a really busy weekend. And there was a really small number of days. And what we saw was that 2005 is the darkest number, or the darkest bar that you see here, and 2009 is the lighter bar. So what we saw was that in that jump from 2 million to 3 million visitors a year, it's not the busiest days. We still seem to have sort of a maximum number of people that are ever going to be here on a given day. That didn't really seem to change that much, but what we saw was that the number of days that are in that 10 to 12,000 and 12 to 15,000, the number of days that have those average or summer peak days, those really went up. And so the number of days where you do have congestion or you do have parking in the neighborhood or you have those types of issues, the number of times a year that happens goes up, even if the number of people there on any given day, there's still kind of a ceiling for that. So that's kind of what we found. Talk a little bit about the data collection we did and how that relates to those attendance numbers I just talked about. There are about 2,188 spaces in the park today. We just counted those, I think, in May. In 1981, there was 2,139 spaces. So there actually has not been that much of a total change, but there has been changes in where those spaces are located, how convenient they might be to where people want to go. We looked at a 5-minute walk within the zoo conservatory in Como Town. 5 minutes is kind of what people consider to be convenient. It's a comfortable walking distance for them. Obviously, there's a number of competing uses for those 547 spaces because obviously some of those people could be going to the picnic area. Some of those people could be going to the pool when it's open. There's a number of uses. Today, the Como Shuttle operates out of the lot on Como Avenue. That lot is owned by the State Fair. There's about 450 spaces there today. And we know from the study that the city of St. Paul did last year that there's anywhere from 100 to 400 vehicles that are estimated to be park users that are parking in the neighborhood during various days of the summer. So that's kind of what parking is out
I
there.
have a question about that. Is the 100 to 400 a subset of the 547?
It is not. Sorry, I should clarify that. The 2,188 includes, actually I will go to the next one. It includes everything that's on this map, and this map is also over there and on the website. It's on-street parking only within the park and parking lots only within the park. So that 547 and that 2,188 does not include any parking in the neighborhood, only within the park.
And then the neighborhood spaces where they are on both sides of the park or one side of the park?
It was the permit parking, that number came from the permit parking study that the city did last summer.
Okay, so one side of the park, the west.
Right, the west side, they had petitioned for permit
Okay,
parking.
there's some data missing from the other side of the park.
Right, that was the data that was available. So, this is just a map that summarizes the parking supply that we collected this year. The orange is our parking lots, the green kind of bars are on-street parking, and the blue is permit parking for staff and volunteers in that area. In June, we went out and we counted the number of cars in all those parking spaces that you just saw. We counted the number of cars in all those spaces, both on a weekday and on a Saturday, to really see how the parking is being used and what the patterns are. So I'll just run through this really quickly. We started at 9 in the morning and we ended at basically 7:30 at night, and we counted the number of cars every hour and a half. And then we also looked at how, for some of the lots, we looked at how long people stayed to try to get an estimate of how frequently the parking is turning over. So this is 9 o'clock on a Thursday. This was June 24th, I believe. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, the green is basically empty or close to empty. The orange and red are full or close to full, more than 50% occupied. So at 9 o'clock on a weekday, the staff and volunteer parking is relatively full. Most of the rest of it is relatively unused. At 10:30, with the zoo and the conservatory opening at 10, you can see how right away you see that those red areas are basically close to full. And those are the areas that we also found are within that 5-minute walk. So I'll just flip through these. This is noon, 1:30, 3, 4:30. So you can see the red areas are starting to contract back towards the center. And then at 6, not much parking any longer. And then at 7:30, there was an event going on at the pavilion and their sports league. So you can see those areas then become full. But during most of the days, they were relatively unused. So we did similar exercise on the weekends. And on this particular Saturday, there was a charity walk or run going on around the lake. So you can see the pavilion had significant parking. And then again, right away at 10:30, the parking right around the zoo and conservatory is basically full, and essentially stayed that way until close to 6 o'clock. This is 4:30, and then this is 6 o'clock. Relatively full, and then there were some wedding receptions going on at the pavilion that night, so those show up again as relatively full. And if you noticed, the parking areas around McMurray, other than during those league events, were relatively unused. The golf course was maybe 50% used. Some of the parking by the lake was relatively unused. So Like I mentioned, the parking within that 5-minute walk area was basically full virtually all day, both on the weekday and on the weekend. The maximum number of vehicles that we counted at any one time was at 130 on Saturday, and the number we counted was 1,502, which represents about 70% of the almost 2,200 spaces. That might be surprising to some people, but really what that says is that, again, what we had already heard, that parking isn't where people want to go, so some of those spaces just aren't used. The other thing we saw was that the average vehicle per space per day was about 3.5. So there's a fairly good turnover during the hours that we were collecting data. And then there's a lot of information on this graph. Again, this is one that's on the website if you want to look at this a little more closely, but a couple things that I want to point out here. Again, the attendance that we talked about a little bit earlier is on the bottom, and estimated parking is on the side. And the red bar represents if everybody drove their car and nobody used the shuttle, how much parking would you have to accommodate all those visitors? So in this sort of average summer peak, which we're defining as basically every summer weekend, you can see the parking demands are, this is close to 1,500 spaces, and we have 547 spaces within that 5-minute walk. So one thing that tells us is it's not feasible to build if everybody drove their car and nobody rode the shuttle, it's not feasible to build parking to accommodate every one of those people driving. So then the next bar down is the blue one is we know that existing today there's about 8% that either walk, bike, or take the bus to the park, and there's about 5% of people using the shuttle, sometimes a little bit more on a busy weekend. So that kind of shows you, okay, that drops that demand down a little bit, but once we get over about 8,000 attendants, either people are going to park outside that 5-minute walk, or they're going to park in the neighborhood, or or people are going to circulate around looking for parking. So you start to see some of those issues. Then the next bar down, the green one, we looked at what would be reasonable goals for usage of walking, biking, or taking transit to the park, as well as what would be reasonable goals to increase shuttle usage. So we looked at increasing walk, bike, transit by 10%, more than double, and then doubling the shuttle to about 10% usage. And that is the green bar. And still in this area, we're still looking at about anywhere from 300 to 500 spaces deficit in that 5-minute walk area. So there still is a shortage of parking where people really want it to be. And then finally, the purple bar assumes the 18% walk, bike, transit, but then it also is based on 25% shuttle usage. And the reason we picked that number is because we know that today about 25% of people that go to the state fair arrive on some type of bus. Obviously that's a major regional event, and they're getting about 25%. So that really is a level that is unlikely that would be reached on a regular basis at the park. So that also kind of provides a bench point. Even with 25% shuttle usage at 15,000 visitors, you don't have enough parking within that 5-minute walk. So really what all of this told us was that not only is it not feasible to just build more parking to solve all our issues, it probably also isn't realistic to think that just from shuttle, bike, walk, transit, that's going to solve all the issues. There has to be some combination of both of those things to really make it work. So that's kind of where we came to. So Jessica mentioned all the concepts are up on the wall. There's a lot of information there. We don't expect you to be able to take it all in. So the comment period is open for 2 weeks. And these are on the website, so you can certainly, we want you to go and ask questions and look at them tonight, but also feel free to continue to look at them and submit comments during that 2 weeks. I just wanted to highlight a couple of key things so that you maybe can focus in on the things you might be most interested in. This is some of our roadway recommendations. A couple of the key things that we we're trying to accomplish, some issues we're trying to solve that we heard. One was intersection conflicts and congestion, and that's why you see the roundabout at Midway and Morton and at Midway and Estabrook. We did hear some suggestions that there should be signals there, or that there should be stop signs there. Roundabouts have some benefits in that they slow traffic down. They reduce injury crashes by over 80%, and they actually cause less delay than signals and stop signs, particularly during low traffic times. You don't have the case where you're sitting at a red light and there's nobody coming. So that's kind of why we were recommending those types of options. A couple of other things. We looked at creating a bus staging and drop-off area up by the conservatory, and then creating a turnaround and converting this section into a two-way roadway here to reduce the conflicts, some of the vehicle conflicts that were right in front of the conservatory with those two roadways meeting there. Then we also showed a shuttle and visitor drop-off area right in front of the visitor center. And the roadways that you're seeing kind of on the bottom here are, as was included in the pool plan. We heard concerns about having more than one access to major areas of the park. So, you have multiple ways to get into this part of the park. So this extension here out to Hamlin was intended to provide better access into that McMurray and pool area. The other thing that you'll see is some suggestions about roadway renaming, that there's a lot of confusion about this section of Horton between Hamlin and Lexington, and a lot of people refer to it as Como. In fact, Como is this section here. In some essence, to simplify some of the wayfinding and directional, to just make that easier for people that aren't familiar with the area to just rename that. This is the parking map. Again, a lot of information on here. A couple of key things. This rectangle right here in front of the visitor center represents what could be an underground parking ramp, about 400 parking spaces. That was an idea that was brought from some previous planning work that had been done in the park. Obviously, underground parking ramps have some significant cost implications, but really limit or have almost no impacts on green space. Then there's some other kind of minor parking lot revisions to a couple of those lots. The yellow that you're seeing there is, that really is the parking that we found was basically full all day. And as a way to provide some incentive to ride the shuttle, that's the area that we're suggesting could be paid parking. That the shuttle lot is a little bit more remote parking, is free, but if the most convenient parking is paid, then that really incentivizes the use of the shuttle and some of that other parking that's unused today. And then we also show 3 options if the shuttle lot were to be located permanently within the park. We looked at a couple of options, one down here where Central Services is located today, one up here in the area of the old golf course lot, and then one over here. Each of these have some significant challenges and potential costs associated with them. That's why we're saying they're potential long-term. Each of them has some, Central services relocating is no small thing. The option shown in the golf course, there would have to be significant changes to the use of the golf course for that to ever be feasible. So that's what we're saying, it could be long-term. In the back, there's also a map that talks about what are some options for off-site shuttle lot that would serve that near-term and interim-term use for the shuttle. And again, the three options I was just talking about are kind of highlighted in yellow here. And this map looks at the shuttle as it operates today, but then also looking at how could the shuttle be used to circulate along some other areas that do have underutilized parking or are key attractions like the pool. We've heard that people would like to see it circulate up to the Lakeside Pavilion, and then are there routes that don't put as much shuttle traffic on Hammond, so that's what some of the blue line was about as well. So again, that graphic is in the back, you can take a closer look at it. This is the one that I just mentioned that does show some of those off-site areas. We really looked at a 2-mile radius, knowing that as you start, if your shuttle lot is further away from the park, people won't want to go directly there. They'll still want to come to the park, circulate around, looking for parking, and then go back out. And that hasn't really solved some of our traffic and congestion problems. So we really wanted to hone in on some of those spaces or areas that were a little bit closer. Pedestrian and bicycle improvements. The red lines that they're seeing there are some suggested connections between existing and proposed areas and trying to make it more convenient to walk between some of the remote areas and the park, which also ties into signing and wayfinding. We heard a lot that people, that if somebody parks in one of those remote areas, they don't necessarily know how to get to where they're trying to go. So signing and wayfinding is certainly a very important part of getting people both to use the shuttle and recognize where that is, but also being able to reach their ultimate destination. So we have some examples up here that you can take a look at. This map is representing both pedestrian level kiosks that would be at key locations to help pedestrians get where they're going, but then also wayfinding signing as people approach the park and are looking for major destinations, whether it be the lake or the golf course or McMurray or the zoo. A lot of the signing that's out there today is really focused on the zoo and conservatory. There's a lot of other signing. So to start to catch those people and get them to where they're trying to go without necessarily going through areas that already have a lot of traffic. With that, I'll turn it back over to Jessica.
Just real quick, we wanted to let you know, again, after tonight, what we're going to do is take each of these 5 elements and package them up into a plan. And also start talking about how that plan is phased or staged, what should come first, what's some of the shorter, mid, or long term, and also how some of those funding and other challenges that Jeanette talked about, how that comes into play. We'll be preparing the draft plan. Right now the plan is to have that done by the end of September. And it will be posted on the website. In October it will go out for the various approval processes. That will happen with District 6, District 10, Parks Commission, and then finally the City Council in November. So real quick, stations. You guys see the 5 different ones. If someone can hit the lights, please. We want your feedback, and you're more than welcome to ask questions. There's a staff person at each station, but there's also a little survey for each station, and it coordinates with the colors that are all around. It's real easy. It lists the improvements. It says, I like it, I don't like it, I'm undecided, or I really don't have an opinion. The only thing we ask of you is if you don't like something, or if you're maybe on the fence about it, tell us about it. Write a few comments at the bottom or on the back. We're going to compile all of this and share it with you at the end of the 2-week period. It will be available online as well through a SurveyMonkey, an online survey. So we encourage you to tell other people about it as well. So with that, question about
Is there going to be just taking 5 minutes if people have some general questions that they want to ask after the presentation before they go to the
I think we could take some generals if you have questions about the presentation. If you have questions about specific improvements, we encourage you to go to talk to that person. And we also want to respect people's time and give you enough time to look around. I don't know if Michelle, you want to-
Just a question in terms of, this is the only park that has these kinds of issues. So I haven't seen a presentation that sort of incorporated in the presentation about, this is this place, this is their issues, this is how they solved it, it turned out really good, or they found out that it resolved that. And I think something like that could be really helpful for people here tonight. You talk about roundabout, but what does it really look like, and then how do pedestrians and bicyclists bring it around about? You go over to Banana Park and practice over there, but I mean, there's a bike path there, there's a lot of people there, and I think it'd be good to see like maybe a picture or something that would show, what that really looks like.
Okay, a couple things on that. We did do a comparison of some other similar facilities. That is available on the website. It talks a lot about parking, or if they use a shuttle, or if they pay for their shuttle, or if they have paid parking, that sort of thing. So that is posted right now. It's part of the background information. We'll have to look into some examples and that kind of thing of roundabouts and some of the other things that you took a look at. But that's right now at a concept level for this type of plan. We can certainly take a look at that, but that would be kind of a future study part two. Just a couple more questions.
I would assume that the parking for the golf course down the part of the lake is not involved in all this?
The park, the existing golf course parking?
Strictly for the golf course, is that still state for the golf course?
At this moment, but I would encourage you to talk more about that with the Jonette who will be at the parking station. Yes, I'm sorry, you've been very patient.
Actually, the reason why I wanted to double check the questions is I did receive a question from someone who knew as a business and wanted me to ask this tonight, and I think it's a really good one. And they asked, how do any of the proposals, stuff you see on the wall, address the concern about preserving historical and environmental, meaning the green space, aspects of the park, or keeping park-related traffic and parking within the park, and near the big seasonal draw, meaning the seasonal use of the park. Specific, and I did hear one specific comment about how there's a proposal in front of ground parking that it does preserve green space. That's the only place that I actually heard that here. So it's a general question that pertains to everything that's on the wall. And if there's not an answer to that tonight, that's okay, but an answer would be terrific.
And you're right, one of the things, it's really hard to capture not impacting things, like how to represent that. We did look at other options for structured parking or expanded parking or changes in the park in that kind of core campus area that would have been, like, for example, an above ground ramp where the lot in the picnic area is today. Obviously that would have, that's considered a historic landscape, that would have significant impacts. That's why you don't see that on the wall tonight. That's why you don't see expanding parking out by significantly expanding parking out by the group picnic pavilion. We did try to be sensitive to those issues and look at where were there opportunities that maybe space was being underutilized or it wasn't prime real estate in terms of like those picnic areas. So you're right in that there's nothing on the exhibits that says, we're saving this space, but that is something that we consciously tried to do. In the back?
Yeah, do you have any data on how far people are driving and where they're driving from? Or maybe of the people within 3 miles or?
Yeah, I don't have that information in front of me. I know it's sitting on the table over there.
Okay.
There was, that council, when they did their 2008 visitor survey, it talks about how many people come from St. Paul, how many people come from Minneapolis, how many people come from the suburbs, that type of, how many people come from out of state.
But no, nothing was specific to that.
No, it was, right, it was St. Paul, Minneapolis, or I think suburbs, and then out of state. Yeah.
It's a genuine question after this. Is there any possibility, do you need them or could they be displayed publicly somewhere? The lakeside pavilion, visitor center downstairs. If you're using them, that's one thing, but it would be nice to imagine people might want to go back.
Would have to see first.
Yeah, we can look for, we can see if there's an opportunity to post those.
They're on. We should.
Could you just introduce, tell us who the staff people are that are going to be at each of these stations so we know who to ask questions of?
Oh, okay. I'm going to be at the parking area. Jessica will be at the shuttle transit, which is the blue sign right there. John, who's standing right there, will be at the roadway, the kind of orange one right there. Todd will be up here at the signing and wayfinding. And Han Wen, who's wearing a yellow shirt.
She's waiting.
Right there. It's going to be at the pedestrian and bicycle station. There will be other PAC members circulating around. Everybody who's on the PAC is wearing a name tag, but we're the people that will be stationed at each of those areas.
So thank you for coming out tonight. Like the lady said, we will be collecting information and feedback through August 27th, and then providing that feedback back. So it's a lot to digest tonight, so if you want to look at it, the diagrams are also online, so you can take those and print them, and have a good night, stay cool. But we'll all be around to answer questions.
What's the website, please, again?
It's the stpaul.gov, and if you go to Como Park, do a conservatory under Parks and Recreation, it's the Transportation Implementation Plan. We also have a special, or an email address, but there's another way, I have to